Welcome to the CFL Outsider, a short series of totally impartial hot takes, odd takes, and generally unconventional opinions on the CFL and Canadian football, with your host and presenter, Old Man Shouting at Clouds.
I've been fairly lucky in life. I haven't experienced a lot of natural disasters up close and personal. Never been in a landslide or an avalanche. Hurricanes, tornadoes, they've given me a wide berth. I have been in the path of a plow wind, which is basically like a tornado, but instead of spinning 90 degrees in a cone, it spins along the ground like a wheel. And that was fairly intense, I have to say. I've also been in the areas when there's been floods and wildfires, and they get your attention. I wouldn't recommend going out of your way to take in any of these events, frankly. But they're all things you can take in stride if you have to. On the other hand, I have also experienced an earthquake. A very small earthquake, really. It was nothing dramatic. The epicenter was miles away from here. All that I really got was just this little bump. The earth just kind of raised and lowered by about maybe an inch or half an inch. Nothing really. If I'd been blinking, if I hadn't been paying attention, I might have missed it. But I didn't miss it. And I gotta tell you, deep down in my skull, my monkey brain was screaming and yattering. My lizard brain was looking for a hole to crawl into. It was just, something was very, very wrong. The ground is not supposed to move like that. And my brain couldn't accept it. For a few days, even once my rational mind had found out it was an earthquake, and I could tell that's what it was, if I tried to think about it, my subconscious was just, no, freaking out. No, wrong, no, the world does not work that way. The universe is out of balance. No. It doesn't make any sense. But whatever it was back there just didn't understand it and didn't like it no matter what I said. It was just wrong, and my brain didn't want to think about it. I only mention this now because I really didn't expect to ever have that sensation again. And yet my very freaky monkey brain has been behaving the same way ever since the Montreal blowjob. All right, that's out of my system. Hey kids, welcome back to the CFL Outsider for week 21. Embrace the chaos, baby. I remain, as always, your 100% impartial, completely unbiased, and frankly flabbergasted host and presenter, Old Man Shouting at Clouds. It may be a little hard for me to articulate stuff today. I'm still a little unbalanced. I mean, we had two very good games, a so-so game, and, well, a dud of a contest. I'll do my best. On the home front, the Goddess has returned from her outing at the Rebelle Rally. Her and her partner finished about the middle of the pack overall and won the International Cup, so they get some money to give to their charity of their choice. And really that was their goal going in, so they were happy with it. On the downside, the Goddess, my wonderful better half, she came back fairly beaten up this time. There's a lot of hard work competing in this rally, and they're sleeping in tents and on the ground and changing tires because they had some real tire issues in the whole rally this time. They got a sponsor who was a tire company. I won't mention it because I don't want to get sued, but apparently the sponsor gave a bunch of the team's tires, and most of the tires they gave them blew up, so... Anyway, so she's back now and hobbling some. I'm sure she'll recover, but she tells me this year is going to be her last. And, she said that before, but in the past when she said it, it's because she came back feeling like she didn't do as well, quite frankly, as she wanted. She underperformed to her level of expectations. And as time passed, that disappointment turned back into gumption again, turned into wanting to do better, and she'd go back and compete. This time, though, I think it's a bit different. I think she is done. because she came back actually, other than beat up, she was quite happy and quite satisfied and feeling good about how they did. So I think that's an itch that has been scratched, and she'll set it aside and move on to something else brilliant. I'll tell you folks about it probably next year, because we are getting down towards the end of my shows here, but with the season wrapping up and all. Anyway, for me, I got to tell you, my fantasy last week, I had my highest weekly placing ever. I mean, I was raving last week because I got up close to the top 100. I'd never been near that. This week I got 159 points, apparently 32nd overall. I mean, really? Oh, yeah. Old man's feeling pretty good about himself, let me tell you. It's kind of like doing renos, I found out. You figure out how it works just when you're done. So we'll see how much of this I can remember from last year. For whatever it matters, I finished off the season. My point total was 2,278.4, and I finished 445th overall. I'm not sure out of how many. I didn't bother scrolling through on that one. But the other one, Pick'em, well, I went 3-1. I thought the Riders would have something to play for it, or even if they didn't, I thought that they would be good enough to beat Calgary. I didn't count on the whole situation they had to deal with. I did not see someone giving them a great big metaphorical kick to the nards just before the game and then expecting them to go out. But anyway, that left me 52-28 for the season, or 51-28-2, depending on if you count the ties as wins or ties. Somewhere around 65%. I'm happy with that, but more impressive, if I may say so, is I checked and I finished for the year 135th out of 16,914 players. That puts me in the 99th percentile. Excuse me while I peacock a little. Okay, that's enough of that. On to the games. Game 1, Hamilton 31 at Ottawa 37. A walk-off wall. You know, I find I really do like the new post-benching don't give a damn Bo. He's just out there slinging it and be damned what coaches or anyone else says. In this game, he had come down a bit from that wow performance he put up against the Stampeders the week before, but he was still impressive. And the Red Blacks, they started Braylon Addison at running back, which was an interesting experiment given that he's really a receiver. I guess we're not happy with LeBourne. Didn't work that well with him. I mean, Addison averaged 4.8 yards per carry in the game, but he only got the rock 8 times, so that kind of limited stuff. I'm hoping that they've decided that they're going to go, that he's just keeping the spot warm. They're going to go with Morrow in the playoffs, that Morrow's ready to come off the 6-game list. If he is, maybe they'll do okay. Or the other thing is they could go and nab Kevin Brown. He's a free agent because the Elk had him on the practice roster at the end of the season, and anyone there is automatically a free agent. So who knows? The TSN commentator spent a lot of time in this game talking about how bad Milanovic wanted to win the game. Based on what I saw out there, he may not have shared that with his players. Overall, the game did not start impressive. Hamilton players in general, they kind of looked like they had their bags packed and 1 foot on the plane home already. When Ottawa's first drive ended in a fumble after 4 plays, and then both teams followed that up by going 2 and out, I started thinking, maybe my evening would be better spent watching paint dry. But once the teams got into it, luckily the quality of the play did pick up some. Hamilton moved the ball 44 yards on 7 plays before having to settle for a field goal. Ottawa responded by going 70 yards on 7 plays and scoring a touchdown with Addison at receiver where he belongs, not at running back. At that point, there was a little more than 3 minutes left in the quarter, or maybe a little under, right around that mark anyway. And Hamilton tried to answer back, only to have their drive snuffed out when the second best boundary halfback in the league, Damon Webb, picked off Mitchell on the Ottawa 2. Saved a touchdown, and the best part of the play, he fell back into the end zone, so it was a touchback. Ottawa got the ball on the 30 rather than on the 2 and were able to move it a bit. Brown completed a 51-yard pass to Pimpleton, but they had to settle for a field goal after that. And frankly, it was Pimpleton that caught the ball, but maybe Brown wasn't throwing to him. He might have been throwing to Miller. Or maybe he was just being very perverse and trying to throw an interception to one of the Ticats, either Moxie or Leonard. Because all 4 players were within about a yard of each other when the ball got there, so it was hard to tell who was supposed to be getting it. There was also a fun play to watch when Addison, as running back, streaked, blazed up the middle for a 2-yard run right into a wall named Hendricks. And that worked about as well as you'd expect it to. Later in the half, Talbot intercepted a pass off of Brown, and the Cats were able to convert it into a touchdown with Conde Smith. That took them 6 plays, and they went 34 yards, so something, you know. Then Ottawa picked up a field goal, and finally they got a touchdown to Ackland for a 2013 lead at the half. Ackland's touchdown was set up by a beautiful run by Crum on a 2nd and 2 short yardage play that he took 46 yards, I think it was, 42 yards. 42 yards down to the 10, and frankly, if Jacob Ruby could run a little faster and had gotten in front of Moxie for a block, Crum would have scored. Moxie stopped him, and he was the only one who had a chance. And Ruby was within about a half yard of making the block. Despite the lackluster level of play, some of the players were giving it their all. Moxie on, I can't remember, I think it was a field goal, might have been the convert at the end of the half. Anyway, he managed to time a rush up to the line, hurtled over the offensive lineman without touching anyone, and almost blocked it. So there was that. And then in his halftime interview, Keandre Smith got to do the honors for the Ticats, and they asked him about, he was close to 1,000 yards. Was he interested? Did he care about it? And he said, no, doesn't matter to me. Doesn't matter to me. It's a team game. I'm not calling him a liar, but I'm skeptical. Dwayne Ford with TSN made his money in the 3rd quarter, working hard trying to make the game sound interesting. It was a hard sell. A lot of the game looked more like an inter-squad scrimmage than an actual league game. At one point, Mitchell dropped a nice 38-yard pass into Dunbar, which was immediately stripped out by Dandridge and recovered by Money Hunter. The game was going like that. 4th quarter started with Bowe hitting Dunbar for a 6-yard touchdown. They went for 2 points, and Lamont just blew up White, and that didn't work. So no scores there. But finally things started to get interesting. Ottawa put together a couple of nice drives that ended in field goals and pulled ahead 29-28. Hamilton came back with a field goal of their own. And then Brown hit Pimpleton with a 65-yard touchdown pass. Very nice one. They added a 2-pointer to Addison. They were up by 6 points with 1:42 left in the game. Now, discouragingly for a team going into the playoffs, once Hamilton had the ball, they marched on Ottawa fairly well, and Ottawa had to take a timeout even because they were a man short on defense at one point. Not a very good look going into the playoffs, I gotta say. And, of course, like I said, Hamilton was pushing it. Bowe worked his magic, took Hamilton 55 yards to the Ottawa 1. And there the Ottawa D put up a wall and held them 3 times, and the game was over. What can you say? Not the most inspired play calling on the goal line. They went with Andre Leatrich twice in a row, and he got stuffed, and I might have gone with him right from there again. He was doing the quarterback sneak. Instead, they put Bowe in, and I thought, okay, well, at least they're going to pass. But all Bowe did was hand it off to Leatrich, and he got stuffed again. 2 yards back that time. Now, a couple of other things that I'll just mention quick, because unfortunately through the whole game, Tim White kind of reverted to his frying pan hands. Did not look good, was not catching well. I think he got 2 catches on many targets that he should have caught. And I got to say, that goal line stand by Ottawa at the end, I love that, because it's things like that that show you football's really the only game where just sheer want to can make a difference. You can just decide you're going to dominate a play and do it. And they did. But I got to say, sorry to Red Black fans. Even with that and the late comeback in Toronto that fell a little short, they still don't look like they're ready to take on the Argos. I don't see them getting past them this Saturday. Of course, I could be wrong. There's always hope. Hope springs eternal. But we'll go to game 2. Toronto 30 at Edmonton 31. The points you need are all around you. This game was another one. Late season game. Thought it was going to be a bad one. Game started out Toronto looking unfocused and Edmonton's unsure what they were going to do. That's how it appeared. Toronto gets in field goal range and then misses it. Edmonton's first drive ends on turnover on downs. Of course, that didn't discourage Glenn Suter, who's doing the play-by-play for TSN. He started fawning over Trey when Edmonton had less than 20 yards of offense. I shouldn't bother him too much or call him out too much on that, because it turned out it was proved. Trey spent the game basically running around the Argo defenders like they were practice pylons. It was almost embarrassing for them. Toronto was eventually successful with a field goal, and then Trey hit Javon Leak for a 65-yard catch-and-run touchdown. I'm telling you, that man, Leak, can go from first gear to top speed in the blink of an eye. Oh. The Elk, being the Elk, missed the convert. 6-3 at quarter time. And I thought, now here's a good chance for the Elk to give their fans a good feeling for the off-season. Toronto is a very good team, and even though they're playing a lot of their backups, it wasn't going to be easy to beat them. But it was a chance for them to go in and show really well. Let Trey ball out, do his stuff, get a good win over Toronto, leave the fans feeling good going into the postseason, and who knows, maybe that even sells some more season tickets for 2025. But it's Edmonton. And I was gobsmacked when suddenly we go into the second quarter and Jarius Jackson decides to give Elk fans the bird one more time and put Jared Dagey in for the second quarter. Why? Why? Really? You're evaluating him? Really? You've had 2 years to see that he's hot garbage. Plus, you're not going to be there making the decisions next year anyway. I didn't get it. My blood pressure went through the roof. I can only imagine what Elk fans were feeling. And naturally, with Dagey in the game, Toronto owned the second quarter and we're up 13-6 at the half. There were really only 2 bits of good news for the Elk in the whole second quarter. One was when really good hustle to the ball earned Bratton an interception late in the quarter. I think less than a minute left or so there. And the other was, again, about 3 minutes left in the quarter, Julian hit a perfect coffin corner punt, landed on the 2-yard line, kicked right out of bounds. Impressive as hell. Yeah, and the Elk, being the Elk, elked it up and took a 15-yard misconduct so that Toronto got out to the 17. The second half opened good for the Elk, though. First, Jackson shocked me. He was smart enough to put Trey back in, and he left them there for the game, so, hey, good on him for that. And Leak, on the first play from scrimmage, breaks off an 88-yard run to the Toronto 12. Did I mention that man can go from first gear to top speed in the blink of an eye? Oh, he is scary to watch. Of course, from the 12, they couldn't punch it in. The Elks settled for a field goal. Toronto came back. Quick, easy 60-yard march, 10 plays, put McMahon into the end zone. So in the fourth quarter, we start with the Argos up 23-9. Not looking like a good send-off for the Elk for the season. But Trey went to work. Yep. The Argos, they were trying to spy him at that point, but it didn't matter who they put on him. He was outrunning whoever was responsible, getting to the edge and around and making great gains. The Elk put together an 11-play, 94-yard drive that saw Trey hitting Lewis in the end zone for his 8th consecutive game with a touchdown. That tied him for second in the CFL record books with Milt Stegall. And if he gets 4 games at the start of the season, he'll tie. I can't remember who it was that has the record. I do remember Milt on the panel joking about if he gets in the end zone, just take a PI, foul him, don't let him get it. But he laughed. He was joking. After that, though, the Elk 2-point attempt failed. Argo got the ball back, went 2 and out. Elk had 3 runs and a 70-yard pass, catch and run by Elk newcomer Jamernick. How do I say this? Sorry. Jamernick. Is that close, Jamernick? I hope that's right. Your last name at least is Smith, so it's easy. So if I'm wrong, I apologize, Jamernick Smith. But anyway, he ended up with that great catch, and then scored the touchdown. Rankin took it in from about 10 yards, straight up the middle. The O-line opened a hole that even I, with my aging, decrepit body and, frankly, single-digit top speed at this point, I could have shuffled forward and threw that and scored. Didn't phase the Argos that much, though. They turned around, marched it right back, 73 yards, 6 plays. Scored a touchdown with McMahon to go up 27-23, 1:43 left to play. So this game got like real friggin' exciting in the fourth quarter. They did put on a show. I had to enjoy it. At that point, 1:43 left, you think the Elk are all pumped up. They're going to march down and they're going to win this thing or do something. And they go 2 and out. Actually, 3 and out because they went for it on 3rd down. So they go turnover on downs after 3 plays. That gives the ball to Toronto at midfield. And frankly, they made the coaching decision that cost them the game. They decided we're not going to get any more points. Even though they'd been moving pretty much at will through the Elk defense, they decided, no, we're going to run the ball, run them down the clock. And they did manage to take it right down to 58 seconds. And then punted it back to the Elk. Took Trey 2 passes to score a touchdown. I think it was like 80 yards total. 1 to Lewis, 1 to Mathis. And with the convert, that put them up 30-27. It also gave us the fun opportunity to watch Mathis, who's 6'9", and Trey do a chest bump in Selly where, well, it wasn't actually a chest bump. Trey's face pretty much smashed into Mathis's chest. But it was fun. And they were up and going. Surely you can hold on to it then. I think that at this point, by the time I said it was 2 passes, but there's 30 seconds left, less than that. But Arbuckle, he starts moving now they got to move it, so Toronto starts throwing again. He gets a little bit of an iffy roughing the passer call, but that helps out. But he does manage to get close enough. They kick a field goal, and it goes into overtime. Wow, excitement. And I'm thinking, hey, because Trey was my fantasy quarterback and captain, at least he'll get some more stats here. Yeah, what do I know? The Argos should have just not even bothered trying with the pushing it to overtime, because you get into it, the first thing they do is take a roughing call. Now, again, it's questionable, but the player made the action that let the ref make that call. So they get bumped back from the 35 to the 50, and frankly, I think then they try a run that gets it back to the 45 or a short pass and miss the field goal. Leak takes it out of the end zone. So now Edmonton's got it on the 35, and any points wins the game. They run once for about 1.5 yards. They throw deep to the end zone with Lewis. And then they bring on Julian, the punter. And he punts a walk-off Rouge single. I love it. I love it, I love it, I love it. A few quick closing thoughts on this game. I certainly do not understand Jerry Jackson's quarterbacking decisions. At one point in the game, Suter said he thought maybe Jackson had enough success to get brought back as the full-time head coach, but I think just his handling of the quarterbacks excludes him from that, makes him ineligible. I don't see him doing it. Anyway, I also thought that Cordell Stewart, the field side halfback for the Elk, he's a rookie as well and had a hell of a game, as did Anderson, who was flying around, and you could tell he was having big fun in his last game. Big fun in his last game. He really should get the Rookie of the Year, but he won't. He plays on the wrong side of the ball. On the other side of the ball, someone who won't get Rookie of the Year, but looked good for the first time we've seen him, was Jake Herslow for the Argos, number 87. I think we'll be seeing more of him. And finally, I don't want to hear anyone bitching about the Rouge and them winning on this one. It's not a reward for failure. It's nothing like that. It's a unique part of the Canadian game. It can lead to stuff like, I know we very rarely see a kick it out of the end zone, kick it back into the end zone. There hasn't been one, I think, probably in 15, maybe 20 years. So a lot of you people probably have never seen it, and you don't know how exciting that can be. But it's only the Rouge that leads to that. It's also a rule that every coach knows. And the fact that some people can utilize it better in their game management and get games with the win doesn't mean it has to be changed. It's fair all around, doesn't give anyone a competitive advantage. That's it. Let's go to game 3. Winnipeg 28 at Montreal 27. Start the car! Oh, by the way, I got to apologize for my voice. I feel like I've got nothing left. And it wasn't like I was cheering loud on the weekend. I don't know, but I have a feeling my voice is coming across really strained. I apologize. Playing hurt, maybe. I have had a bit of the sniffles lately. Okay. Now, of course, there's really only one thing to talk about in this game. But just to keep the suspense, let's do a little bit of a summary. Surprisingly enough, it looked like Montreal wanted this game more than the Bombers did, even though the Bombers were the ones trying to clinch first place. Als did go 2-and-out on their first possession, but they did it with 2 deep passes that really sort of stretched the Bomber defense and made a difference later in the game, opening up holes in their zones. Bombers marched, got a field goal attempt, and missed the 49-yard field goal. Al's backup returner, they didn't have Letcher in the game, they had Lindsay in. He made a mistake. He brought it out and he got it to, I think, about the 10 or 15-yard line. But the Als went 2-and-out, had to punt it back to the Bombers, and Bombers managed to march it a little bit and get it back into field goal range and kick the field goal there. So they got their 3 points eventually. Now, I only mention that because if Lindsay had taken the knee in the end zone, didn't bother running it out, he would have given up 1 point, not 3. And the Alouettes would have been starting on the 40, not the 15. So even if they didn't do anything with it, their punt would have been much deeper. Winnipeg would have had a much harder time getting the field goal. They probably would have given up 1 point instead of 3. And that their 3-point difference, that was going to prove important later on. Anyway, it did take Montreal a while to start putting the points up on the board. But I got to say, their offense looked much more in sync right from the start than it has over the last 5 or 6 games. And at the end of the first half, they were up. The Als were 13-9. Late in the third quarter, Kolaris and Lawler took advantage of a slip by one of the Als defenders. I didn't catch the number. But anyway, that left Lawler open for a 73-yard pass and run and set up a Nick Dembski touchdown. So then the Als were still up only 20-19. They opened the fourth quarter with a 1-yard scoring run or scoring sneak by Davis Alexander, who'd taken over from Cody about towards the end of the third quarter. And I got to say, there really wasn't any drop-off in play with him in there. I can't wait to see where he ends up next year. Winnipeg managed to come back, get a touchdown of their own, missed the 2-point convert try. So now, we're getting down to about 5 or 6 minutes left in the game, and it's 28-26 for the Als. Teams went back and forth with it. Nobody getting anything until a little over a minute left in the game. Winnipeg tries a 60-yard field goal. They miss it, and Montreal takes it out of the end zone. Get it out to their own 19. They are set up perfect. Winnipeg does not have any more timeouts. They've got roughly 50 seconds on the clock. 2 runs will run it down to close to 10 seconds. A deep punt, cover for make sure that the returner doesn't get back in field goal range. You walk home with the win. No problem at all, right? That's all they had to do. So they did it. 2 runs, didn't get anything, doesn't matter. 12 seconds left. We're going to punt it. Then it happened. If you haven't seen it, if you haven't heard about it, go watch the highlights right now because words don't do it justice. Then come on back and I'll rant a bit more. Now that you've seen it, yeah, that wind came out of nowhere. From nothing, dead calm, to a hurricane in the punter's face, like someone had flipped the switch on. Punt travels maybe 30 yards forward, rolls 10 yards back anyway, and leaves Winnipeg in very makeable field goal range. The wind goes away. It rains a bit, but the wind goes away. Steele makes a walk-off winner, and the game's over. I've heard a lot of people this week saying that the Bombers did not win that game because of a freak 20-second wind blast. They say the Bombers had played well enough to win and deserved the victory. That may well be true. I can't say for sure, but I would humbly suggest that if that break had not happened at that point in the game, they'd be hosting a semifinal playoff game this weekend. I've been a CFL fan for longer than a lot of you have probably been alive, and there's not much I haven't seen. But that was new to me. Wow. Just wow. A few last quick remarks on this game. The Bombers were not playing like they were a team trying to win first place and clinch it. They didn't seem focused. You know, there were obvious signs like the fact one of their best receivers, Kenny Lawler, was offside badly twice. And so you can point to that right away, but it was more than that. That was just like the 10% of the iceberg that shows up above the level. They didn't seem to be into the game. They were making mistakes. They were slow. I don't know. Maltos, on the other hand, you can tell he's enjoying kicking in the CFL. He was pumped up after making his field goals in that game and flexing and showing off the guns, which were pretty good for a kicker, I must say. I also had a moment when I thought, human perspective is such an interesting thing. Ontario Wilson for the Bombers took an offensive PI call. Now, Dwayne Ford is calling the game, and he's next offensive player, and he thought, it was a close call. You shouldn't have called that. It was nothing. I saw a receiver pushing a defender hard enough to send him a good 5 yards down the field and an obvious OPI. All comes from how you see the world. Now, Joran Dominic, I hope I'm saying that right. He's back up D end for Montreal. Hadn't seen him before. He was playing good, given the chance. There was one very pretty play midway through the third quarter where he kind of just split through the O-line and stuffed Brady for about a 3-yard loss. He's got potential, and we may see him playing more regular next year. Part of the stuff that didn't look good for the Bombers going into the playoffs with this was their quarterback pressure. They really didn't get any pressure on the Montreal quarterbacks all night. So if that happens to when they're playing teams in the playoffs, doesn't look good. And finally, for all you old timers out there who'll know what I'm talking about, where the heck was Bob Cameron when the Alouettes needed him? All right, Game 4. Calgary 27 at Saskatchewan 12. What might have been? Looking at this, Calgary came out ready to play. They wanted to put on a show. And if the Riders had anything to play for, this might have been a classic for the ages. Might have been one of those games we talk about for 10, 15 years. Alas, it was not to be. Coming off that Bomber Alouette game, I didn't expect the Riders to play well. And I mean, even before I saw the end of the game, I thought if the Bombers win, I don't expect the Riders to play really well, but they'll play well enough. Yeah, they're going to have the backups in there. And they're going to look for their opportunities to make some good plays. It'll be good. Yeah, they're locked up in second, but they're expecting that. It's not that big of a shock, so they should be good. But the way that game ended, specifically watching it from as a team thinking we have a chance to play for first place. We have a chance here today to win and get ourselves that bye that seemed completely out of reach, and then just have that snatched away that way at that last second. Winnipeg had dominated all game. Yeah, okay, so there you know that, and you go out and you play with pride, and you win anyway. And even if Winnipeg had marched down the field in the last 3, 4 minutes, 2 minutes, and scored, that hurts. But you can understand it. That's football, and you go out and play. But the way it happened, that gut punch, that punch to the solar plexus, just completely unexpected. Nothing to do with football, nothing to do with good strategy, with good play. Sheer, absolute, wild-ass luck. That has to knock the crap out of you as a player, watching that and then knowing now I've got to go out and play. So I'm not at all surprised that they looked as bad as they did. I'm surprised they worked up the gumption to even play. I know they wouldn't, but you've got to feel like, why don't we just forfeit and go home? Don't have a lot more to say. It was nice for Mayer that he got to finish on a good game, because I think it's his last game as a starter. He may be a backup somewhere next year, but I don't think we'll see him back. Robustelli for the Riders runs some very nice routes. If he can learn to hold on to a football, he may be back as a receiver in the future. Now, I did think there was a play in the second half that pretty much summed up what this game was, all about it. Mayer was scrambling, and Avery for the Riders chasing them down, and he ended up with a chance along the sidelines, just level him, big hit, take the quarterback's head off. If the game meant anything, it would have been wow. This game, what did he do? He nudged him out of bounds, gently. No need anybody getting hurt here. Now, Jaden Dalkey, who was starting at safety last year, hasn't had a chance to start this year. But he got a bunch of expanded playing time in this game, and you could tell he was having some big fun. He was laying the wood out there and grinning from year to year. There was also an interesting sort of out-of-sync moment for TSN. Dustin Nielsen was talking about the fans in Pill Country, while on the screen they were showing a shot of 3 or 4, probably 6-year-olds in full rider gear. Maybe not Pill Country. And frankly, that's all I've got to say about this game. It is so disappointing. We could have ended the season on such a high note. But anyway, a few extra points. Think about. Everyone's all thinking, well, Trey's gone now from Edmonton. They've treated him like crap, which they have. And he'll go somewhere else. But I question where. I really do. Montreal has Cody. Or if they want to go with somebody new, they got Alexander. If they don't sign Alexander to a starter money, another team might. Although, again, I'm not sure who. Ottawa seems very happy with Drew Brown. He's playing well. Toronto's still got the Chad, and maybe they'll take the opportunity to show him the door if they go out in the first round of the playoffs again. Hamilton has a choice between Bo and Powell. They're happy with both of those. If they decide they go in with Powell, they can't, well, I guess they could afford to keep them both, because Bo's on the restructured salary, but you're not going to get much out of him if you don't start paying him for how he played. So he may be on the trade block, and that's one more for Trey to complete with, along with Alexander. Then you go to Winnipeg. Yeah, maybe there's a good place to start or to go. You go to Winnipeg, you back up Zach for a year, and then he's done. Or maybe they move on Zach already just to try and get something better. So that's a chance. And Saskatchewan. Harris is turning 40. So they may need someone. And of course Edmonton needs someone. And Calgary needs someone. So you look at that, they're all over the place. Winnipeg, Saskatchewan, Edmonton, Calgary, 4 quarterbacks, right? But then you got BC sitting out there with both Nathan and VA. They're going to have to trade one of them. They can't afford to keep them both. So there's one of your quarterbacks gone out of the way. One of your spots gone from there. Like I said, Bo may be on the market. There's another spot gone. You're competing against Alexander as well, too. And Calgary may or may not, depending on how things play out, may or may not get PJ Walker back up here and hope to go with him. And if they don't, one of the other teams might. So there may not be a lot of places for Trey to move. I hope he goes somewhere that commits to making him the starter and builds a package for him. Because, man, I want to see him play. I also wanted to just say, and take this for what it's worth, please, people, when you're making... One of the nice things about being a football fan is we're allowed to bitch about things, and it doesn't have to necessarily make sense, but try and think a little bit. I get annoyed when I hear people making points that they haven't thought really all the way through. There was a bunch of people after the Winnipeg game saying that even though Winnipeg won, they shouldn't have tried that first 61-yard field goal. It was too long. They should have gone for it on third down, and if they turned it over, well, they turned it over. As it was, they won anyway. But think about that if you're one of those folks saying that. If they turned it over there, they would have been turning it over, frankly, about the 52-yard line. And from the 52, even a punt into that wind would have kept them out of field goal range. So by going for the field goal and forcing Montreal to run it out, they put themselves in a position where, with the wildest ass luck you'll ever see, they won the game. I know you can't count on that, but think it through before you make the complaint. Same thing as I hear Riders fans complaining that the control center cost them a win in Ottawa. And if they'd had that win, then even if Winnipeg won, they could still win the game, and they could have still won their game and come out with the top. But no, they wouldn't have, because even if they won that game, they would have got 2 points. But they got 1 point for the tie. So 2 points would have still left them tied with Winnipeg. If Riders came back and beat Calgary, they'd still get second place. Think these things through, people. I don't mean to pick on just the fans here. Even Ben Suter was talking about the fact that, the Riders, yeah, they've got a good record, but who did they beat? They beat Edmonton and Hamilton early in the season, and then Toronto when Toronto was struggling a little bit. Yeah, and then Winnipeg, when Winnipeg was struggling a bit. And then they lost a whole bunch to Montreal and Winnipeg and BC. And then they came back and they beat Ottawa and Calgary twice and Edmonton. And yeah, so how good really are they? Well, the thing is, part of the reason those teams were struggling is they were playing the Riders. If Hamilton had beat the Riders twice in a row instead of the other way around, Hamilton would have had a much better start to the season. The Riders have been right in close games all the way through, so I don't think that argument holds up, Mr. Suter. We also heard that Randy Ambrosie is calling it a game, calling it a night. He's going to retire. Lots of people are saying he really was being pushed out, that the board voted him out. I don't know about that, but if it's true, whatever. We'll see who they get new. Apparently he's staying on long enough for them to find a new commissioner anyway. And I think now that he's announced his retirement, it's really time, people. Can we please start giving Randy a break? There's things that could have been done better. I personally, the one thing nobody's talking about in all of this is the Chad affair. That's my biggest disappointment with Randy, is he should not have let that man back into our league. But other than that, people bitch and complain that the CFL is Bush League. It doesn't do anything to try and get better. And you get a new commissioner that comes in and he tries the global initiative. He tries to get expansion out to the Maritimes and it doesn't work. But instead of getting credit for trying, he gets ridiculed. So what do people want? When you're shooting for the fences, trying to make a difference, it doesn't always work. And I personally would like to say to Randy, Mr. Ambrosie, thank you for your service to the CFL. I think you've done a good job. And let's see, what else can we talk about? Well, everybody's talking about the MOP race. And they were saying last week before the game, if Brady has a big game, he clinches it. Well, he didn't have a big game. I know, because I had him in my fantasy. I thought he'd get me something, and I had 136.9 points after Friday night. Saturday, I had Kenny Lawler and Brady Oliveira and the Saskatchewan defense, and I think I got another 30-some points. 20-some points. 23 points between the three of them. So, no, Brady didn't look great. The Bombers didn't look great. They're very beatable if they play like that. going to be interesting to see who gets up against them in the West Final and what happens. If it's Saski going in there, it could be a very good game. And finally, I will probably put out something here in the next week or two, just a retrospective on the season. Look back at all the weird, wacky, wonderful things that have happened. It was a season you just could not predict. People are making this scripted joke. You couldn't write this stuff. After a season like this, I don't know what the playoffs are going to do. But to end the season in the same weekend, to have the walk-off rouge and the Montreal blowjob, that's appropriate. That fits this season. So that's just about everything I got. Gambling advice, well, we're into the postseason here, so there's really only the two games to consider. Ottawa at Toronto and BC at Saskatchewan. I haven't seen the lines yet, but I can say, just looking at it from the overall perspective, if you're looking at gambling this weekend, I wouldn't. Don't. Thanks for stopping by. Only 3 more weeks for you to enjoy my smiling mug if you're on YouTube, and to hear my lilting, almost dying tones here tonight if you're on the podcast. Before you go, please remember to subscribe and hit that notification bell icon on YouTube. Apparently it's important. Please help me out by sharing this with anyone who might be remotely interested. And please keep mashing that like button. If you're listening on a podcast, well, a nice 5-star rating will help me get noticed. I'd appreciate it. I am going to be doing some other stuff in the off season that will be probably less football related, but I'll send out a teaser on that. For now, please help me try and pump up the channel. And of course, as always, I'm always hopeful that I will get a chance to see some comments from you folks. Positive or constructively critical, either way. In fact, the constructively critical ones are probably better for me, although they tell me they would hurt my YouTube rating. I don't know. And if you don't want to leave a comment out in public on YouTube, I'll put my email address up here somewhere on the screen, somewhere in post-production, so you'll see it. It's basically oldman, all one word, dot, shouting at clouds, all one word, at shaw, shaw.ca. That's it for now. That's all I got. I hope your team is still playing this weekend or enjoying a bye and getting ready for the finals. Best of luck with your playoff pick'em. Fantasy's all over and done. I hope you had a fun season and enjoyed that. And until next week, get the hell off my lawn!